defenders, nervous strikers, they'll deliver. Crowd roars erupted, you can feel the quake. 80,000 voices.
Hello there, everybody. You're welcome to the channel. Welcome to the show. So today we're talking about the NPFL, the Nigerian Premier Football League. You know, because anytime you see the list of the Nigerian team put out there for the Super Eagles or for the Flying Eagles, you always hear people talking about why don't we have any home-based players? Why don't we have any why don't we have any home-based players? Why don't we have any players from the Nigerian Premier Football League? Now, those are valid questions, right? Because it's a thing of pride for any country, for your national team, for you to have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe more players from your local league, from your domestic league. It's always enough, right? It's always something that you look forward to, that you'd be happy to have. But I don't think overall, I don't think it's super crucial, respect to I don't think it's super crucial with respect to the how the national team performs. But overall, I think that's part of one of the problems that the Premier League that Nigerian football is facing at this minute, the way the NPFL is right now, right? Because you see the lack of talent. In fact, I'll just tell you a short story, not too long, hopefully. There's a video I was watching a couple of hours before I put up the stream, and then there's a story about a young boy, a young footballing talent. Apparently he traveled abroad to on the behest of an agent. He traveled and everything right now. At least that was a year ago, so hopefully things have been sorted out. But it was a right old mess. There was no offer on the table, per se. So, and everything was just so murky. So for me, that's an issue. And why do we see players make that move, take that risk? They take that risk because they're desperate. They take that risk because they have to earn money. That's the only skill they may have, to put food on their table, which is go out there, play football. But when you have the situation the way it is right now, players become super desperate, especially when you look at how the grassroots is and the poor integration of grassroots talents to the Premier Football League clubs. So you have that issue, you have that disconnect. So these are some of the issues that we're talking about today, right? And just talk about Super Eagles just for a little bit. If a player maybe has scored 5 goals, 6 goals, and maybe is currently earning, let's say, I don't know, 120,000 naira, 300,000 naira, a month, and you get an offer of $500, $600 a week, what do you think would happen? That player would be tempted to move. So there are things that need to be sorted out in the NPFL. And just to say this, there is no connection for me between how the Super Eagles play and the state of the NPFL. But it's good for the NPFL to be working, because if the NPFL is working, if it's thriving, it benefits everybody. It benefits the NPFL staff, management. It benefits the club. They earn more money. They have more visibility. Benefits the fans. You can actually go out there and root for your team, root for the team that's probably at your backyard. You have more football to watch. You have more accessibility to players. And then for the players, I'm sure you do have some players that don't really want to leave the club, that don't really want to travel and go out of the country. So if they had an opportunity to earn, say, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 pounds a week, some wouldn't leave. Then how much more if you were earning something about 10, 20, 30,000 pounds a week, some would stay, and you'd have local legends at their various clubs, as opposed to seeing players. There was one player that moved and he's gone to Iraq. So I think that we have to look at, really. We really have to look at. So now let's look at the reality on ground, right? With respect to the clubs, with respect to why maybe some players are leaving, with respect to the value of the clubs. Because one thing is that you may say, clubs, why don't you pay your players better? But on the flip side of things, how much do they earn to compete with the likes of the Moroccan League, the Egyptian League, the South African League? Then you talk about European leagues. How much do these clubs even make? How much are they valued at? Before you can say, oh, you should pay your players XYZ amount of money, because you can only give what you have. So these are things that we'll be looking at. Now, I just a little research, and Carlisle United, a club in English football, they got relegated from League Two last season, at the close of last season, and their books on the 20, their accounts filed on the 30th of June 2024 show that they were worth £10.9 million. Now, this is a club in the fourth tier of English football that has now got relegated from English football. Is worth £10.9 million. And I'm sure in overall global football, people look at that and say, that's a sniff, that's next to nothing. And that'll be true in European football, that'll be next to nothing. That's probably a sign-on fee for a prospect that you're hoping to come good in 3 to 4 years if you go by the Chelsea model. A player bought for £10 million most times at the top level. It's not seen he's not seen as a player, that you would be hoping for to help you win things in that season, if you're looking at Premier League clubs. So people look at £10 million spent on as a club being worth £10 million as a tiny club financially, commercially. Then let's even say, as they've gotten relegated, the value of the club has halved. So let's say it's now 5 point something million pounds. Still, even at that, it's still more valuable than the club Remo Stars that won the last Premier League, that won the last Nigerian Premier Football League title. Remo Stars are what? In around 795 million euros, 795,000 euros. Putting everything together in terms of the value of players, players are sort of valued in and around 115 million euros for all the players at the club. That's in and around what Cole Palmer earns. No, that's less than what Cole Palmer earns a week. That's less than what Cole Palmer earns a week. And then you look at the overall value of the club, in around 759. So if you say 760, or even if you scale it up to say it's 1 million euros, that's just a little more than what Erling Haaland earns. So you can see the disparities. So for players to stay, for the NPFL to improve, to become a top league, let's say the 7th or 8th best league in the world, even, certain things just have to improve, just have to change. And we just have to talk about the harsh truth. The way the league is run right now is not viable, is not sustainable. The ownership model of clubs is not sustainable, it's not viable. You look at clubs, most of the clubs in the Nigerian Premier Football League are owned by, are owned by governments, are owned by the various state governments. I know Remo Stars are a privately owned club. I think Kun Khalifat, I think, is another club that just gained promotion. I think they're a privately owned club, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a few others. But for the most part, most of these clubs are owned by the government. And government and sports really, really doesn't mix, especially when you want to tend towards commercial activity. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Because you have people who are maybe the commissioner, the chairman of the club. They don't see it as a commercial enterprise, so they don't take steps to ensure, the commercial viability of the club in terms of improving its branding, in terms of attracting investors and sponsors to the club. That's not something that they do. And this is a harsh truth we have to face. So each time we say, how come we don't have that top talent coming out from the NPFL? That's one of the reasons, because players have to leave because you don't have value you don't get proper value from the league. And you also have clubs outside of the league that are competing for the services of these players and can offer a bit more. And what may be even seen as a bit more than what the NPFL clubs might be able to offer is insignificant in the larger football world. So for me, I think the first step to curing the problem with the NPFL is every club must either of two things. One, the clubs get owned by private individuals who have the mindset. So you have to now start looking for investors to get majority owners. That the state government can still have stake in the club, but you need to have a majority owner, someone who comes in and owns at least 51+% of the shares of each of those clubs. So from your Rivers United to your City, whichever club, must be owned 50%, 51% by a private individual. Of course, you or entity investment group, you would do your due diligence. And these investment groups all over the world, that basically what they do is invest in clubs. And this is not a charity, obviously. This is a business. So you have to approach it with that business mindset that, okay, we're looking for SKY investment consortium or whatever to invest in the club, or we're looking for this individual that has money to invest in the club. Or, on the other hand, you can say government now should start this sports investment fund, but we all know how that would go. So for me, take that completely off the hands of the government. Then when you start with that, you have this private entities that know the clubs have to be profitable for them to get return on their investment. Then you begin to see changes. Then you begin to see something different happening. Because if, let's say, Red Bull Group, for instance, comes in, invest in the league, let's say, Rivers United, and now becomes Red Bull Rivers United, they would not let that club run at a loss. They will not let that club, just keep letting its best asset leave, especially if you made, at least in the agreement, come to a point where they've invested huge money into the club, maybe for academies, investing in the club itself, maybe signing the best players all over West Africa to play for that Red Bull Rivers United. If that's done, then they want to make sure at least they get return on their investment. And the point I'm making is these investment groups or these individuals that would come in to own these clubs would not come in to do so on a charity basis. They would come in to own these clubs or have controlling stakes of these clubs because they want to make money, because they want to make profit. And because they want to make profit, then they would have to invest in the club. Then they'll have to ensure that certain things work. And for me, my suggestion is this: the NPFL, you need to take state governments, FAs, take your hands out of the day-to-day running of the clubs. The only thing the FA should be in charge of, officiation, referees, linesmen, regulation as to how the on-field sports should be regulated and things like that. But for the clubs themselves, you should have investment groups or private companies or private individuals coming in to own these clubs. Because right now, the harsh truth about this is these clubs are usually used as compensation for political allies, or however you want to put it. Right? Someone wins an election, gets into office. One of the people that helped him win the election, okay, come, let's make you a commissioner for sports. And the commissioner for sports, we all know what's there in sports. Maybe the biggest thing there is the club, and you have maybe 60 70, 80 million naira budget for transfers, and you know what's going to happen with that money. So that is the issue. That would not work. That would not work. And as long as the clubs are not economically viable and commercially viable, then that will be an issue. And as long as that's an issue, the clubs will be unable to pay their players, a competitive weekly wage, and what that would then result to, it would result to players leaving the club just like that. They'll end up leaving the club so quickly. Before you know what's happening, players gone. So those things have to change. That's the attitude about the Nigerian Premier Football League, for one. Then we have to talk about grassroots. How many of these clubs have academies per se? When have we heard about the NPFL Youth Cup, NPFL League? This is the winner of this. And then, if those clubs indeed exist, what is the link between the under 17 club or the under 17 academy of, let's say, a Remo Stars or a Kano Pillars with the senior Kano Pillars team? What is the link? What is the link between both clubs? Sorry, between the club and the academy. Where is the pathway? Is there a pathway from that grassroots, from that academy to the NPFL club? And in turn, is there a link between the grassroots, let's say those teams like in River State, there used to be a club called Water Strikers. So what would be the link? Is there a link between Water Strikers in Port Harcourt with or to the Rivers United on the under 17 side, and then in turn you have a link to the first team of Rivers United? Then you now have players flowing through. There is none. There is none. Because what we now see happening most of the time is you're now seeing clubs coming in to sign players straight from grassroots academies. Straight from grassroots academies. So you see the challenge we're talking about. Straight from grassroots academies, they sign these players, and for pittance, I would say. So you missed out on revenue you'd have got there. So this is the truth about the NPFL that people ignore. Then we talk about visibility. How many people really know about the NPFL? I mean, in Nigeria, not talking about us. We're going to talk about globally afterwards, but within the NPFL itself, within the country itself, how many people know about the NPFL? How many people know when a game is to be played? How many people know when Rivers United who are playing Kano Pillars? How many people know? Now you might say, "Oh, you're Nigerian, you should know." No, that is the role of the responsibility of the league to market it, to make sure people get to know what's happening with the league. That is the responsibility of the league itself, and we don't see that happening. Visibility. What I would suggest would be, of course, you have to up the stakes for your marketing, the commercials. They want to go via radio, social media, TV. So people do not know about the league, even in the context of Nigeria, even within Nigeria itself. People don't know about the league. And then there is a question of timing, scheduling. When are these matches played? Do they clash with matches played in other leagues? I know people will say, if you really want to promote the league, if you really believe in the league, you should have the league air the same time you'd have a Premier League match air. But for me, I think that is wrong. That would be a wrong strategy. That would be a wrong strategy, because if you're trying to push your league, if you're trying to bring your league to a point where people get to know about it, then you have to shape the scheduling in a way where, in a way where it doesn't clash with the Premier League, so to speak, and then people can get to watch it because they're trying to draw interest. And then where can people actually watch league matches? You always get rumors, but you don't really know where for sure to watch the NPFL games. Sometimes they say it's on Star Times, some people say it's on maybe DSTV or something, but that's back in Nigeria. So, but where do people watch these games? Not known. Not known. I would suggest you have a streaming service for the league. Have a streaming service, or even for the entirety of Nigerian football. So you can call it Nigeria Football Plus. So everything about football, grassroots, NPFL, the President's Cup, everything, even some Super Eagles matches, if it's a friendly game, you have it on there. Even if it's a World Cup qualifier, AFCON qualifier, and you can make some agreement with CAF and FIFA and all that. You can have delayed versions of those games on that NPFL, that Nigeria Football Plus. So people can go on there, you can subscribe, and that will then be additional revenue for the league. But at this point, there's none of that. You don't have that right now in the league. And I think that is a big problem. That is a big problem. Then we talk about visibility. Visibility. Back to the point. How many people know about the existence of the NPFL? Within Nigeria, outside of the country, that's even worse. What marketing strategy? What is the marketing strategy about the league? And the surest marketing strategy for your league is by acquiring top level playing talent. And acquiring top level playing talent, you'd have to spend a lot of money. You'd have to spend huge sums of money to get those players to come in. And that's why it can only work if you get into investment agreements or ownership type agreements with companies or organizations who are used to investing in football clubs. Now, there's PIF in Saudi Arabia. They own the majority owners of Newcastle United. They own Al Nassr, I think, as well in the Saudi Pro League. You can have this. You can have the negotiations with these entities. I know some people will say, "Oh, but they're foreign entity." It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What matters is you discuss business with them. That this is how you make money. This is how you make money. Come invest. This is our strategy. That's how the Premier League came into focus. Of course, we were building the league, but at some point, they started to get some notable names out of England. Same thing, similar strategy to what the Saudi Pro League are doing right now. You have some people mocking the Saudi Pro League, but each transfer window, they keep signing players. And people, they're expecting them to go away. People were expecting the Saudi Pro League to be a retirement league, to be a league where they only sign 35-year-olds, they only sign, people at the end of their careers. But now you're seeing players who are 20, 21, 22 go to the Saudi Pro League, stay there for a couple of years, and maybe leave. It will get to a point where players will sign for a Saudi Pro League, maybe Al Nassr or Al Hilal, and end their career there, and just maybe sign as a 22-year-old and remain in Saudi Pro League for the next 10 years. That is the blueprint that the NPFL not should copy, must copy. You must get investment into the league. You must get investment into the league. So you can get it from even local investors. If you have people you can reach out to, for instance, why not have a business negotiation with an Aliko Dangote, for instance? Right? You may say, oh, he's involved in everything. It doesn't matter. Let him be involved in league as well. Billionaires, what they want to know is, how do I make money? How does this profit me? And that is what you should then begin to get involved in. Make your pitch. You can have your NPFL investment organization or whatever that is in charge of making these negotiations with this either a billionaire within the club, within the country, or an investment group outside of the country. Have these negotiations with these people so they come in and invest. And the kind of agreement I'm talking about is not an agreement where you want to still control how to spend the money. No, because we know LMC, the league management company, are not going to do right by the league. We know the NPFL board themselves are not going to do right by the league if you get those investments. So what the kind of agreement I'm suggesting is, let's say an investment group called KJM, fictitious one, KJM Sports Investment comes in, say, we want to have a partnership with you on the league. So, okay, we're going to give you the rights to the league, because obviously you never sell the league outrightly to anyone. Licensing rights to the league, naming rights to the league, naming rights for various club sides, and then you pay us a certain amount, and this relationship would exist for the next 10 years. And after the 10th year, you can't renew your agreement. You can't renew this license agreement and then go on. And the only thing the NPFL, the FA, that's the Nigerian Football Federation, would be in charge of would be officials, referees, linesmen, all that. So the technology, the development of the stadium, grassroots development, signing players, that would, and everything commercial would be entirely in the purview of that investment group. And then what would then happen is you could say, okay, we're going to give you maybe $100 million for this, or $100 million for the next 10 years, whilst we run it this way. And then, of course, you maybe get 10% of transfer fees that could come. That could be 7% goes to the league board and all those people, and then 3% go to the country as in taxes. When you get into that sort of space, then the league will begin to grow. Because definitely, if in terms of visibility, if you sign, who would I say now? Would I say Hazard? Hazard is retired. So if you sign maybe a Son, for instance, say rather than going to the MLS, he comes to the NPFL. Immediately, all eyes around the world, how is Son going to the NPFL? What is happening there? They begin to take notice of you. People forget that 3 or 4 years, 5 years ago, no one outside of the Saudi Pro League really took notice of the Saudi Pro League. No one. Anyone that tells you, oh, I was really following the Saudi Pro League is lying. But they become intentional about improving their league. So Nigerians must become intentional about improving the NPFL. And this, loser arrogance, which is, oh, we will do it ourselves, we'll not look for investment anywhere. Where has it gotten the league to? Nowhere. So you need to look at this from a purely business perspective. Purely business perspective. Because if you don't do so, the talent drain you're having in the NPFL will continue to happen. And then the expectations that people have, which is, okay, we want to get 2-3 players, from the NPFL to be regular in the Super Eagles, will just be a farce, because it will never happen. Because when once a player shows any sort of ability, the player is gone. Once a player shows any sort of promise, he's off. Second division club in Austria, third division club in Lithuania, some head to Iraq or something. There's a player that's gone to Iraq. So that's it. And some go to Tanzania. So we keep heading out to places where they can earn more money, they can make a better living for themselves and their families. So the harsh truth about the NPFL is a lot of things are wrong with it. Firstly, the way the league is run, the visibility of the league, people don't know about the league. I'm sure a lot of Nigerians in the league don't even know about it. You'll be shocked that there are people who know about the Premier League, that know about the Premier League, the English Premier League, but don't have any idea about the NPFL. They don't have any idea about the NPFL. Yeah, they don't have any idea about the NPFL. So that visibility thing has to be looked at. Then you talk about the grassroots thing that I've just mentioned. You talk about grassroots, talk about youth development. How come you don't have players gaining promotion from, let's say, Kano Pillars under 17 into the Kano Pillars first team? Why aren't we seeing that happening? Why aren't we seeing that happening? Because that is key. You must have that pathway. In Brazil, you always see one wonder kid always sold to a top European club, but once that one goes, the next one comes in. But for Nigeria, we don't see that. We don't see it. Arere Parabo was a beyond limits that was meant to be like how put it now? That was meant to be that was meant to be the academy or affiliated club to Remo Stars, but he never really got there. And even when Beyond Limits gained promotion to the Premier League, they had to lose their place because they said associated management ownership. So that just tells you the issue there. Because if clubs were run properly in the Nigerian Premier League, probably Beyond Limits would be an actual academy. Probably it would have been Remo Stars on the 17 or Remo Stars on the 18, and there would have been that pathway, for the likes of Onyebuchi Obasi and Arere Korabo to have moved from Remo Stars into the Remo Stars under 18 into the Remo Stars first team, senior team. And as you get players leaving from that grassroots level, while it's good for the players, Arere Korabo has gone, he's with Miondelen on loan, Onyebuchi Obasi at Valarenga. While it's good for the player, the clubs lose out. The clubs lose out. Because if you have those players at a grassroots level, they move into an NPFL club, play a couple of years, you have the right narrative around the players, you have a proper streaming platform where people can actually watch games and improve the visibility for those players. What will happen is, rather than the grassroots club being offered maybe £50,000 for a player, by the time you play 2 or 3 seasons, or at least 2 seasons in a Remo Star, for instance, maybe you're valued at £5 to £6 million. So those are the things that we need to look at. Youth development is poor because for a country like Nigeria, first of all, Nigeria is football crazy. There's no other sport apart from football. I think every other thing done in Nigeria is kind of, okay, let's just do it. The athletics, the basketball, whatever you do is always second to football. So for a country like that, the way grassroots football right now is set up is really poor. And for you to have a sustainable league, your grassroots has to be in order. It has to be in order. Now, not just to get players in that will eventually play in the NPFL. Of course, that should be the initial dream. But in terms of generating revenue for the league, that's one of the ways to generate revenue for the league. By players coming through, improving their value, and moving on. So that's for one. And then what's the prize money for winning the league? Now, before anyone says 100 million, 200 million naira, let's look at how that works on the international scene in terms of the exchange rate, and look at the economy of Nigeria, how that works within the country, if it is indeed enough value to those clubs. So you have to up things, visibility in terms of creating proper marketing about it so that people know about the league. You could have the best product in the world if you don't tell people about it. If people don't know that product exists, then your product could be the worst product ever. because no one knows about it, no one is watching it, no one is using it. So for me, that is really, really important, that visibility piece. And how do you solve this visibility piece? What you do, you need to create different packages. So you have the TV or viewing right package for local audience. You have that. How do you want to do it? Is it NTA you want to sell it to? Is it channels you want to sell it to? You must have that internal package. Is it DSTV you want to sell it to? You have to have that internal package for audiences within the country. And then for audiences outside the country, you need to have another package. So you might choose to divvy up the package according to sections of the world. Maybe Europe has its own package, the United States or the Americans would have their own package. Or on the other hand, you could just have full international rights, right? So one organization or one media outfit can own, the all international rights outside of Nigeria, or one can own within Nigeria, another can own for Africa, another can then go on to own for outside of Africa. So this could be a thing where you could even have a streaming service yourself if you want to do it that way, because I think that's where football is even heading to anyways. Have your Nigeria Football Plus that's immediately available all over the world. And if you put it if you make the pricing cheap, maybe 30 naira or something like that, instantly becomes available everywhere. You can watch the league, follow your football, see what your clubs are doing. Then you can even market and sell on. Of course, you now have opportunities for advertisers to come and buy up spots on the app. And what we don't understand is if the NPFL begins to thrive, everyone gets benefit for it. Whether you're a content creator, you talk about football, every day like me, or you're a pundit for a mainstream media outfit, or you're a media outfit yourself. Because if you acquire the rights to show the NPFL, you have a sponsor that want to sponsor each of your programs because of the NPFL. Now, for the NPFL itself, it improves the visibility of the club would improve, and then of course the money they would earn, for media rights would improve. So, but right now, the way the league, and then down the line, you can then puff your chest out to say, this XYZ player should be in the NPFL. I mean, should be in the Super Eagles from the NPFL. Because that's one question I ask people when they say, oh, we must have players from the NPFL in the Super Eagles. You ask, who is the player? Name one. Who would you want? They'll tell you, oh, there should be so many talents there's so many talents. But who is that one? Who is that one you can point to? And it's not because there is none or there are none, but visibility is poor. And then the ability to retain these talents in the league is poor. So I've been waiting for a while. You want to join me on here, I'll just drop the link in the chat. You can join me and then we can have a discussion. So I've just been talking about the harsh realities, the harsh truth about the NPFL. Nigeria, a country that loves football, you have football talents emerging everywhere. Every nook and cranny, everywhere you look, you see people huddled around TV, people in their houses watching football matches from every league on the face of the earth. You have people waking up at odd hours of the day, to watch their favorite European team playing a preseason friendly. You have your team, maybe Chelsea playing in the US preseason, you wake up 2 a.m. to watch the match. But you may not even know about the local club in your state, what's going on with them. So the truth is, for one, first thing I mentioned, the way the clubs are run right now, the structure of these clubs, they're not sustainable if you want to grow the league. Now, if you want to massage the ego of the governor of a state, then fine. You can leave the clubs still as properties owned by the state. If you want to make a commissioner, a political loyalist feel good, fine, you can make him commissioner for sports. But if you want the clubs really to thrive, you want the NPFL really to thrive, then at least controlling stakes of those clubs need to be taken from the hands of, the government. Now, for sure, government can still have stakes, maybe 10%, 25% stake, 35% stake, and then the rest is owned by a company, a person that has money that's coming in to invest. And of course, you must do your due diligence. You do your due diligence to say, okay, this person coming in, what is his intention? How much is it worth? Or how much is this business worth? And I've said earlier on that you have companies, you have investment consortium that their whole business is to invest in sports. It's to invest in sports, is to make money through sports. And for me, that's the best. Because don't be fooled by anyone that will come in to say, oh, we want to give you £10 million just for nothing. Or we want to give you £10 million for grassroots development just because we are good. No. When entities come with that sort of message, they usually have some, not so genuine intention or not so beneficial intention. So have that commercial negotiation with a company that is in the business of investing in sports. So whether it's a PIF, whether it's Red Bull Group, whether it's Clear Lake, Blue Co, any of the sort of companies, or it's an individual or entity within the country that has track record of investing, then you get them to come in and invest in the clubs and own controlling stakes of clubs. And the importance for that, like I said, is when you invest in something, you want to see that business succeed so you can get return on your investment. Because when state governments, they own clubs, they don't really care about the club being successful because they haven't invested their own money into it. But if you have a private entity investing money in a club, then of course you would know they would want to see profit come in. They want to see profit come in. They want to make money off of maybe they invested 5 million, 6 million to acquire the rights of the club. They want to make sure at least come the end of the day, they're getting 2, 3, 4, or 5x what they invested in the club. And that will result to better welfare for the players, better pay for the players. And once you begin to pay the players well, then you don't see them rushing off. You don't see them running away. Then when you have your talent staying in your club, staying in your league for 2, 3 years before moseying off to some strange league, then your league continues to improve. That's one part. And then when you now have your youth or your have a pathway for youth and players from grassroots to flow from grassroots, flow to academy, from academy, flow to the NPFL club themselves, then you begin to see, you cannot talk of young, exciting talents. Then the next thing we're talking about is visibility, marketing of the league, promotion of the league. Now, I'm sure a lot of people, some people may live in Mushin, some may live in Port Harcourt, some may live in Guarempa, but they know Estavayo William in Palmera. Some even know how his father looks. Some know his sisters. Some know about Cole Palmer. Obviously, they know about Cole Palmer. Some know about some player in Manchester United Academy. But they don't know about a talent that is next to them. It's because visibility of the league. The Premier League, I'm sure, invests millions of pounds in promoting the league. So everywhere you look, you hear about the Premier League. You see something being said about the Premier League. You hear journalists talk about the Premier League. You hear TV stations, radio stations, special programs talking about Premier League matches, talking about Premier League games, talking about Premier League players. Where is that? Where is that version? Where is the version of that for the NPFL? Where is the version of the NPFL? If you want to know about grassroots talents, you have to be hyper intentional about it. You have to do the work. Like, you have to be super intentional about it. You can't just know about it or read about it or in the page of a newspaper or even on social media. You have to really, really be intentional about it. But for places like Brazil, but you can be in Nigeria and know about a Brazilian wonder kid. It could be, I can bet you right now, there are people who knew about Lamine Yamal whilst in Nigeria, before he made his debut for Barcelona. They can tell you how old he was when he made his debut, how many minutes he played. Where do we have that? Are we able to say that about any Nigerian player moving in from grassroots? So those are the truths that we must tell ourselves, because that last part of having 2-3 players being in the NPFL, being in the Super Eagles, as real part of the team, not just transient people that come and go, or people that once they get to the Super Eagles and then leave the club, and so they are then sold by their club to a club in Europe. You have to make sure the league is working. There has to be proper pay. There has to be really good narrative about the league. And one thing that needs to happen is, I know there's people who are super defensive, hyper protective of the league, so to speak. So anytime you criticize the league, they're like, oh, no, what I trying to say. Each time you say, I don't think the players earn good money, they say, oh, no, they earn this XYZ money. They tell you they earn 300 and 400,000. They tell you, oh, the league is. No, that's not the way. If you're sick, you need to go to a doctor. You need to know what ails you. Then that's the first part of getting better. That's the first part to wellness. But if if you keep denying the fact that you're sick, then that you're on the pathway, of heading 6 feet under. So that's it. So with the NPFL, if people keep denying the fact that the NPFL is not where it should be, given the fact that Nigeria is football mad. In some countries, football is like second, third, fourth spot maybe. Cricket is the main thing. But Nigeria, football is the only sport. Every other sport, whether that's good or bad, but that's the truth. Football is the main sport. It's like the only sport. Every other kind of sport just exists in and around it. But football is the main thing. So if football is the main thing and the NPFL isn't working, then something is really wrong. If you can have 95% of football matches or football stadiums packed, I mean, absolutely packed, come game day for those matches, then something is still wrong, and that's it. And that's the issue. Something is wrong. Of course, you see the odd matches where you have stadium full. It should be the opposite. The reverse should be the case. You should have the odd match where the stadium is empty. A couple of people here and there, and then for the most part, your stadiums are packed. So why do we have the empty stadiums? It's because sometimes the timing, because you have this ego thing where people want to say, oh, we can compete with the Premier League. What the Premier League? Oh, this is our own thing. Okay? But the Premier League already has a fan base. This is a business. This is a business. The Premier League already has fan base all over the world, and of course in Nigeria. So that's what you're competing against. So your strategy should be, let's find a way to tweak the scheduling of the games and promote that scheduling of those games. Promote that scheduling. Let people know on social media or via the various media. Who should know what is going on? Who should know what is going on with the league, with the clubs? And let's talk of, if you want to know, you will know. That is someone who wants to fail at business. That's what the person will say. If you want to know, you will know. No. If you're doing your own private business and you're selling shirts, you can't just keep the shirt in your pocket or in your dresser drawer and say, hey, whoever wants to buy this shirt, If you're interested in buying the shirt, you buy it. No, there must be that intention. You must market it. So Lagos says, I agree. You need to fix the local league. If anything, the recent Chan performances should really give you an indicator of where your countries are. And that's true. It's something I don't want to agree with, but it's the truth. It is the truth. If you're being honest, if you're being objective, it is the truth. Right? Look at the NPFL. Look, although there's some other things we have to talk about for that Chan match, but overall, the quality of players that went to the Chan, we have to talk about it. Although you can say he had a higher goal scorer from the NPFL that was lumped up on the bench for the first couple of games, I think, and didn't get to play, which is odd. Another Eritrean masterclass, his philosophy of football. In case you haven't watched that video about Eritrean philosophy, what I said in response, you can check it out later on, But that's part of what is wrong with the NPFL. Like, you have politics where you shouldn't be having politics played. The way the talent retention is an issue. It's a major issue. Talent retention, talent pathway from grassroots to NPFL itself. It's an issue. It's a problem. We can't be waiting for La Liga promises. For me, it's an actual shame that you're waiting for another league to come in and help you organize, some sort of youth league type of thing. You should be doing yours. And just as I'm saying, you have to do with the Premier Football League, you have to do the same with that under 17 league. People should know it exists. In fact, I think those games for that under 17 side, if it exists, should be live on YouTube every day, every match day. Those games should be played live on YouTube. You have a YouTube platform. Or if you want to go the way of having a bespoke app, go ahead, have it. Let it be publicized, let it be marketed. Because, like I said, the way the world of football is heading to, you see owners of football rights who begin to have their own sort of Netflix, for instance. Maybe call it Sportflix or Premfix or whatever. That's where football is going to. And you see, the day the Premier League does that, the whole world will know about the existence of that app. The whole world will know about the existence of that app. So the same thing should apply to the NPFL. Enough of, if you're Nigerian, you should support it. That's not the way. Of course, Nigerians want to support local clubs. Okay, there's a club that I was talking about his jersey. I inquired of the club, where can I buy your shirt? No response. So those are the things we need to do. First off, change the structure and model of club ownership. It needs to be changed. Now, if you want to say the government itself becomes hyper intentional and says we're going to have our sports investment group that will invest in these clubs and run them all over the country, then fine. But do we think that can happen? In the nature of things in the country, do you think that the government can actually come, set up a sports investment group and appoint someone that will actually come and run and be in charge of investing in all these clubs? Because that will be a massive outlay of funds running into billions of dollars, say $1 billion, for instance. Are you sure that someone will come in and use those funds right? No, I don't think so. I'm not quite sure myself. So that's what I suggested. You have these relationships with companies that are already in that business. So sometimes in life and in business, you hire what you don't have. You collaborate with others to bring their talents and their skill set for in an area you don't have. So in terms of running the club, let's face it, for how many years the NPFL has been in existence, the clubs have been run the way they've run, and we've not seen real profitability. So you get this companies to come in and invest, like I said, in a purely capitalistic endeavor, not a charitable charity, because charities, for me, I feel very susceptible to being scams. So purely capitalistic business sort of negotiations. You come in, you're investing this, you're getting X, Y, Z, like there's stadium naming rights, competition naming rights. So let's say it's a Red Bull group that comes in. You can get, say, Red Bull Premier League, right? You can come in, all the clubs, if that's the only group you're able to negotiate with, all the clubs could be Red Bull this, Red Bull that. And a lot of people give you blowback from all over the world. If that begins to happen, people will say, oh, this is union football. It doesn't matter because no one right now cares about the NPFL. And neither should they. That's the honest truth. No one outside of Nigeria should care more about NPFL than Nigerians themselves. So you don't expect someone in the UK to care about, the NPFL. You don't expect them to. No one cared about the Saudi Pro League until they intentionally began to change the league with investments they put in the league, in facilities, in acquiring playing talent, in creating narratives and stories around their league. So Nigeria would have to do that. You have to be intentional about that. So if you have the Red Bull group coming in, you could have something to say, okay, you're going to invest $100-200 million dollars as part of the agreement into grassroots, into building academy facilities and all that. And then what you get in return, because let's still keep it 110, it's still a business agreement, a business endeavor. Go and say, okay, for every player that is sold for £1 million and above, you get 60% of it. Then 30% goes to the club itself. As in 30% goes into the club itself, and then the rest shared between government and the NPFL board. Things begin to grow that way. And one thing you get to see, then you say, okay, as part of that, you've built out all those facilities, that pathway becomes a youth pathway. It becomes a youth pathway. And what then would happen is, when all that is happening, you begin to engage with content creators on YouTube, maybe myself, other people, Football Fans Tribe, all these people all over Nigerians that create content around sports, begin to talk about it, create narratives around it, we begin to hear about it. Mainstream media. You could even have your own NPFL run media outfit. But will be led by the investment group, because what we want is for things to work. It's not just to have a face to say, oh, but it's the person from Nigeria that should know. You run it, and things will run well because they want to get a return. Those investors will want to get a return on their investments. And we know Nigeria, when it comes to football talent, it's mad everywhere you look. Whether you want to look at low income areas, high income areas, wherever you look in Nigeria, there you have talents everywhere. Football talents everywhere. It's just that the way the clubs are run right now, these clubs are not tapping into it. They're not tapping into the talent you have. So if you have that sort of agreement in place that I mentioned, then that's the first step to moving things forward. Because right now, government-owning clubs, it's not working. It's just not working. It's just not working. It's just not working. So for me, that's one major challenge with the NPFL. That is a harsh truth we must accept. We must accept that. We must become intentional about it. And then, of course, talk about promotion of the league. That's fair. Then you build a lot of IP rights around the league. So those are things I think we have to take into consideration if we want the league to actually grow, change government ownership structure, change visibility. Like for people that watch, for those of us who watch stuff on YouTube and all that, how many times have you seen an advert for the NPFL? Come on. How many times? I know I've seen a couple of times watching something on YouTube, and then you see the Premier League advert for the Premier League comes on there. How many times have you seen that? I would say none. I don't know about you. I haven't seen any advert for the NPFL come on. How many times have you seen any content from, let's say, NPFL TV, if there's anything like that, that advertises, that creates content on YouTube talking about the NPFL, talking about Okano Pillars, and Rivers United are playing on Saturday, talking about the key players. Do you see any content like that? No. And when you don't do all that, how do you expect people to know about the league? How do you expect to improve the visibility of the league? And let's face it, this present generation and even people slightly older consume content via social media, via things like YouTube, So that's where you advertise things. And people will get to know it, and people will get to buy into it. People will get to feel it. So if we're not ready to do all that, then the NPFL will continue to be where it is, which is a place where it's not improving and not really growing. And then the whole talk about, let's get local-based players into the league, into the Super Eagles, is pointless, because you'll never be getting the best, because people will always be leaving early out of the country first off. So that's not even going to happen. Although for me, I must admit, the whole thing that this South African coach said doesn't quite make sense to me when you look at it from a larger scale. He said something about, no Nigerian player is in the team, whatever. What about Brazil? All their players are outside of the country. But the difference between Brazil and Nigeria is this. The league works to a large extent. They play a couple of years, 1 year, 2 years, and they go. And then they get huge offers. They get huge offers and they leave. And to tell you how good the Brazilian league in comparison to Nigeria is, if a Brazilian player, say, leaves Santos and goes to, let's say, Real Betis or something, and he struggles, maybe goes on to Sevilla, struggles a bit, doesn't quite work, at some point, that player could decide, you know what, I'm going back to Flamengo. And he could actually get an offer that could really interest the European club, and a deal could be done for that player to come back to, let's say, maybe a Flamengo. But that can happen for Nigerian clubs, because do you really think Enyimba can really make a really, really interesting offer for someone that's maybe struggling in the Premier League? No. And you wouldn't blame Enyimba because they don't have the resources. So these things have to change. And on the point of government ownership, when Uzo Kalu was the governor of Abia State, he was super interested in Enyimba. He was a football fan. He invested a lot, pushed them. That's how they won the 2 Champions League titles they won. The 2 CAF Champions League titles they won. But then when you have a governor, so more like a pharaoh that knows not Joseph, you have a governor that comes in that doesn't really care that much about football, then that means the club will either stagnate or plummet. So that's why you need to go and get people who want to invest in football, who see investing in football as their business, and who know how to make profit from investing in football. License it to these groups, say 10 years. End of 10 years, you can then renew, you can then renew, your license agreement that you have with us. So I know this topic is not one that's super, super interesting, but it should be. It should be. Because a lot of times we talk a lot. A lot of Nigerians, we talk a lot. We want this guy. Why are we not having players in the Super Eagles? If your league isn't functioning properly, it's even unfair. It's almost criminal for you to suggest that a player from the NPFL should be in the Super Eagles when you know the state of the league. The play is on one key thing: the clubs are unable to retain top talents for any length of time. A player comes in, he plays a couple of games very well. It doesn't even matter where the club is. It could be Kuwait third division, the player is gone. It could be Chinese fifth division, the player is gone. And you won't blame them. This is my point. I don't even blame them. I'm not even blaming them. I'm not even saying don't go. Because for me, I talk about football. For them, that is their profession. That is how they make their daily bread, playing football. So if they see someone that has made an offer 10 times more than what they're getting at, let's say, the Rangers, they're gone. And you can't blame them. You can't blame them, they're gone. So something must change. I've talked a lot about this. I've talked about things that I think should change. NPFL want to consult me, they can consult me, or you find different sports consultants to talk to have these consultations with as to what you want to do, because you can't keep doing the same thing and expect to get different outcomes. We've had this club owned by government for so long, and the outcome is not going to change. It's not going to be different. It's not going to be different. So that's point. We've come to the end of this stream. I want to say a big thank you for those who watched this with me. I know it's not the usual football tactics talk, but we have to talk about it. Talking about the football league, that is one way, to get it noticed. That is one way for us to identify the issues and problems, that the league does have. So we keep talking about it. I'll do some more shows about it, talking more IP specific things. So we'll talk about a lot of stuff on here. So also we now have new membership tier on this channel, so you can join those membership tiers if you want to. Like I said, because on this channel, one thing we're looking to achieve, of course, we want to talk about sports, talk about football, the Super Eagles, talk about the Premier League, talk about the NPFL and all that, but we also want to be able to impact, on live. So, because my vision for the channel is at some point, this channel should be able to give scholarship to people, should be able to give advice to players looking for clubs and things like that, give them guidance and all. Because like I said, there was a video I watched, something happened to a young Nigerian player. I just said, wow, he probably didn't have someone to give him proper advice. So that's part of the vision of this channel. So thanks for supporting, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing to the channel, and thanks for sharing this content to people love content like this. So at this point, come to the end of this video, and I'll see you on yet another video. So have a splendid rest of your day. Stay well. Definitely stay blessed. Bye-bye.